Welcome to Shareholders of a Better World, brought to you by TBLI Group. At TBLI Group, we have an established reputation as an organization dedicated to building the ecosystem of global sustainability and impact investing. We're doing this through educating, advising, and facilitating transactions in global sustainability and impact business, as well as capital solutions for private companies, family offices, and fund groups. For nearly 25 years, TBLI Group has created a vertically integrated ecosystem of education to action through TBLI conferences and TBLI consulting. More about our company can be found at tbligroup.com. This webinar is brought to you by TBLI Foundation, which hosts educational learning experiences dedicated to a better planet. Through the foundation, we build sustainable communities by sharing the people and the experience is making a difference to so many of our lives around the world. Our weekly podcasts bring impact thought leaders that are doing and not only chatting. Now let me introduce my guest today. Good afternoon from our studio in Amsterdam. I introduce our guests. For those of you who've never joined our platform, if you want to clap or laugh or say something, find something brilliant, there are 3 emojis at the bottom of the screen that you can use. If you have a comment or question, just type it in the lower right or left hand corner depending on your screen. And if you need to send a private message to anyone in the chat area, just move your cursor or your mouse over their name and a window will pop up, and you'll be able to send them a private message if you don't want to share with everyone in the group. So I'm really thrilled today because an old friend, Sean Lesser, and a new friend, Brent Hurd, are going to share their experience from hardcore, super sophisticated, incredibly successful financial media tech moguls to trying to retool and repurpose and restore the mental health balance of men. So Sean and Brent, thank you so much for coming. Share, if you would mind sharing with the audience a bit of the journey which got you from hardcore green investment banker to where we are now.
Brent, did you want to give a little intro on you first?
Yeah, sure. Can you see me okay?
No, I don't see you.
Yeah, my video's on. I'm not sure. Robert, you're muted.
You might want to exit and come back in so your screen will come on.
Okay, great.
Exit and come right back in.
Sure.
And in the meantime, Sean,
I'll myself.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, of course. So, Sean Lesser, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. A little background on me. From New York, born in Brooklyn, like my friend Robert here. Grew up in New York. And then on my business side, I did 15 years. I did international institutional equity sales. That was my first job out of school. So selling stocks to banks overseas. I worked for Morgan Keegan, and I worked also where I met you, Robert. I don't know how many years back. And then in 2007, I co-founded the first impact investing investment bank, Big Path Capital. So on that side, we worked on over 50 different investment banking engagements. We worked with over 200 impact private equity funds. So that's the side that I headed up on the placement side. We also did different convenings similar to Robert, and we crossed paths from time to time. So we did over 60 impact events globally. We had maybe 3,000 or 4,000 impact investors attend those. And then we also had an online investor portal. Some of you might have been on that. We had around 1,000 or so LPs from all over the world on that. So that's my kind of my life on paper and what you see on LinkedIn. I'll tell you a little bit more what's not on the piece after I let Brent give a little intro and then go into it.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Thanks, Robert. Great to be here. Great to meet everyone. I am a former media technology executive. I was an early employee with Yahoo in the late 90s in New York City. Yahoo was a company of about 200 people at the time, and the digital evolution was just beginning. After Yahoo, I was with a couple of different startups. One of them was acquired by AOL. And then in 2010, I opened up the Twitter offices in Atlanta, Georgia, when Twitter was a startup, and Twitter was about 150 people at the time. We were doing about 10 million in revenue, and I stayed for about 4 years, and we were about 4,000 people doing about 2.5 billion in revenue. And so went through a pretty interesting rocket ship ride with Twitter and learned a whole lot about the inner workings of social media, the why behind the products that are built these days, and then also how a product actually changed the world. And I will hand it back to Sean, and then we can go into the mental wellness piece.
Sure, thanks, Brent. So I was just telling you kind of the story of myself on paper. Let's talk about what's not on paper and what's kind of real. So it was last September, and I was really depressed. I had trouble eating. I had trouble sleeping, and I lost around 40 pounds. Now, that's terrific. If you're on a diet, it's a terrific diet, but I wasn't on a diet. So, and this kept on building up. It kept building up, the stress. And then it happened. It was December 18th. I was on a Zoom call similar to this one where I had basically a full mental breakdown. It's not a medical term, but I could not function. I couldn't really speak. I couldn't really move. It was just like a weird situation. And I was also suicidal. I was telling my wife, please fucking kill me. Sorry for being blunt here, but it's just, I don't want to be here anymore. And that's not the best thing to say to your wife. But that's where we were at. So what do you do in that situation? Like, what's the game plan? So we didn't know what to do. So in Atlanta, we went to the hospital, Emory Hospital. They rolled out somebody basically on a Zoom machine and said, do you want to get checked into the institution? And at that point, I was like, just help me. I don't know. I just need help. So we signed into this place, an institution called Wesley Woods here in Atlanta. And basically you get there, you sign in, and then they search you. You can't have any forks or knives or book covers or belts or anything. I had like a face mask. They're like, no, you can't have that. So simple terms, it's a place so you don't kill yourself, right? So I was in there, and it was a surreal experience. That's another story for 3 days, and then I got out. I still wasn't right, obviously, and my wife was there. Again, I'm married, 54 years old, I have 2 kids, 14 and 15-year-olds. So my wife was there. Then my mom, she came. She lives in Long Island. She came to our house to be kind of on Sean watch, and she's 82 years old. So terrific. We're all there. Now, this was the beginning of the new year, January 3rd, and I was like, all right, I'm not doing good, but I'm going to go back to work and kind of get back on the horse. So sometimes partnerships don't work out. I'm not going to get into that, but basically I got bought out of the firm of Big Path. Now, Big Path was my whole existence. Sean equals Big Path, etc. Everyone knew me. I wouldn't be on this call without wearing the hat. And that just threw me even deeper into depression. I was shaking like this for 2 months. I couldn't stop shaking. It was just, people thought I had Parkinson's, but it was just kind of the stressful situation in my mind. So I got bought out. And then around that time, I was talking to my wife, and she was saying to me, hey, you need to talk to Brent Hurd. And I was like, a little background by me. So me and Brent, our kids played Little League baseball together. I had my daughter and son played on the team with Brent's son. We were friends, you kind of see somebody at a game or whatever, soccer match, baseball match, you just hang out and you talk and you like each other and you're excited to see each other, but we weren't like best friends. So my wife is like, listen, you need to contact Brent Hurd. And I'm like, I like Brent. He's a good guy, but why do I need to contact her? And she just said, I just have a feeling, right? So I think we're going to put it on the screen. So Brent basically got a text from my wife. Brent, are you going to bring that one up?
Yep.
Just give us a second. I'm going to hand this, since Brent got the text, I'm going to hand it over to Brent.
Yeah. Whoops. Okay. Whoops.
You're going to get there.
Let's see. No, not.
And let me just say about the baseball while you're doing that. So my daughter was on the boys team, and she was the best player on the team. So
There we go.
On her a little bit.
There we go.
Go ahead, Brent.
Yeah. So let me sort of kick off and just give a little more background. So after Twitter for me, I left in 2015, and at the moment that I made the decision to leave and sign the paperwork to go to another company, I had an emergency appendectomy followed by walking pneumonia. And this was from the intense stress of building a business over the past 5 years, and that had scaled the way it had. And for me, having gone through a health crisis, which I had never been in my life, I went on my own, I like to call eat, pray, love journey. And I really leaned into why I had gone into a bit of a dark night myself, a bit of a depressive state, a bit of a, who am I? What is my purpose? All those big questions that we all ask, but still trying to, continue to push forward. So have been on a journey for now almost a decade in terms of learning and understanding of the mind and of sort of personal development. And long story short, I got this text from Blanca. This was December last year. And she says, "Hey, Brent, it's Blanca. I know it's been a million years. Hope all is well. I was hoping you could give me a call because I could use some wisdom regarding what Sean is going through. He's going through a difficult time, and I think that would be helpful if you could text me back or call me." And I said, "So glad you reached out. 2 questions. Is he in any danger, and what is his current state of mind?" And she responds, he is not well, having very dark thoughts, and I'm concerned. And so I immediately reached out to Sean, and we began a journey together. And what that looked like was I would get phone calls from Sean at 6 o'clock in the morning, and he would say, "Brent, I am on the floor racked with anxiety, and I've identified the parking deck that I'm going to go off of today." And I would say, "Sean, you can make it to 7 a.m. and I want you to meet me at a coffee shop." And we would have coffee together. And this would go on for 2 to 3 months, whether it was coffee, lunches, walks. He would come to the office, and I would sort of give him all of the materials that I had been developing over the past decade, that I had been teaching people back in the media technology world, executives and CEOs, really all having to do with their mental health, mental wellness. And then Sean then went to treatment for 60 days, came back, and we were having a conversation. And in that conversation, I said, "Sean, this stuff is real," meaning men and women are dealing with this stuff everywhere. And Sean said, "Well, that's what we're going to call it." And I said, "What is it?" He said, "Well, I want to go tell my story to help as many men and women and families that I can." And I said, "Great, let's do it." And we named it The Real. And what we've been doing is we have been on an 8-city speaking tour, speaking to organizations across the country about Sean's story, my story, and this that has been happening globally regarding depression, anxiety, and suicides. And so what we have, yeah, great. So now the presentation is working. So and we're just going to walk you sort of through. These are some of the realities of mental health. And look, the words mental health have a bit of a stigma attached to them because immediately it goes to mental illness. So, and we've got a lot of feedback that, mental health equating to mental illness. Mental health is actually mental well-being. And we all are in the mode of creating mental well-being for our lives. So this is actually what some of the actual text from Sean to me looked like. Me saying, how you doing? Him responding, "The gym was terrifying. I'm doing shitty this morning, afraid of the day lying in bed, afraid of what's going to happen with my business, having a rough day, very, very anxious." And actually during his moment, he actually, for whatever reason, had the wherewithal to video some of his journey, and he recorded this, which we wanted to share.
I'm 54, father of 2, husband. I have a good life, but anxiety and depression has taken over. I can't handle it. Every day, I'm just drained by it. It's a painful feeling that goes throughout your whole body. I can feel it in my arms and my legs. I get panic attacks. I have difficulty just taking a shower. It's just like getting out of bed. It's just, or going down the street, or going to drop my kids off. I can't handle it. It's incredibly painful.
And so the reason that we share that is because what we know and what we've learned over the course of what I've learned over the course of the past decade is that at some point along the way, all of us go through a moment, and that moment is either driven by grief, loss, career, financial, health, and in most cases that will push us into a moment. And in that moment, what I like to say is that we all get into the ditch. And what we need is someone to pull us through the channel. And so all my work with Sean was really just pulling him through the channel. I had been there myself. I'd understand where he was, and he just needed someone to sort of pull him through, as we all do at some point in our lives. So one of the things that I did for Sean was one of the days as we were going through it, I just put together a bit of a curriculum for him, or themes. And these themes are, things like breathing techniques, being in nature, sort of understanding what happens in the body and the chemicals that the body is creating, the dump of chemicals when we're in stress, and the cortisol and the adrenaline that dumps in that just creates the cycle worse, meditation techniques. And then most importantly, is, sort of, we all have this inner artist in us. What is that? And I always encouraging people to get in touch with that thing. So even if you don't think you are an artist, you are an artist. We're all artists. And it's just a matter of getting in touch with that. We can go deeper into this, but I just sort of wanted to kind of quickly go through it. And as I'm sure most of you, because you're here, have seen, we are in a moment. And we are in a moment globally of crisis as it pertains to mental health and as it pertains to men. And obviously, you may ask, well, why is this just focused on men? It's focused on men because that's been our story and that's been our journeys. What we do know is that when we work, help, and heal men, we are helping and healing the children and the spouses of the men as well. As it pertains to the data, in case you haven't seen this, it's really compelling. Close to 50%, this is in the US, 50% of the population is either anxious or depressed. And if you see, simply over the past 4 years, how much these numbers have risen. Now, obviously, we've had a global pandemic. And what I believe intuitively is that the pandemic, a tremendous amount of this that was already there under the surface. And so now what's happening is it's now in the world. And the problem is that hospital systems and mental health care providers are overwhelmed by the demand. In most cases, treatment centers do not have space to take someone in. And by the way, specifically, if those people do not have the resources to get in. A little bit more on the and I'm sure a lot of you do have children. What's incredibly concerning is the levels of depression and anxiety simply in the 18 to 24-year-old range. And actually, if you go even younger, you'll see these numbers continue to rise. And so you say to yourself, well, what could that be from? And if you track this back about 8-9 years, you'll see the entree of social media. So we believe that there is connection between social media usage of devices with children, and because their minds are not yet fully developed, even in the 18 to 24-year-old range. So here's where the biggest problem is that over 100 million people in the U.S. are suffering. We think that number is actually low because we think there's a tremendous amount of underreported numbers. Here's what's incredibly concerning. Upwards of 60% of the youth with severe depression do not receive treatment. Most medication management and psychotherapy clinics are not accepting new patients. Upwards of 50% of depressed patients suffer from treatment-resistant depression that literally have no impact from medication. One of the interesting innovations that's happening right now is within the psychedelic space that is beginning to unwind some of the treatment-resistant depression from medication, which is really, really interesting within the space. Why we think this is happening, this is a combination of data and intuition. Like we talked about, technology and social media. There's a stigma around mental health, specifically with guys 40 plus, 40 to 65, 40 to 70, high performers. They don't want to talk about their emotions. They don't want to talk about their levels of vulnerability. It was programmed as weak or soft. And specifically, what we know is that, women can walk into a room in an amazing way, sit down with friends, open up and be vulnerable. Men, on the other hand, will sit shoulder to shoulder with their friends and they won't talk about a thing. Everything is good. And that's how men are taught to operate. It's what we believe is leading to the lack of connection to purpose, creativity, and faith. Like I talked about, societal and childhood programming, and then workplace stress and pressure. Corporate culture, within corporations, it is who's going to go to their boss or their superior and say, hey, listen, I'm not feeling well today mentally. But if you break a leg or an arm or you have a physical issue, no problem, you're going to talk about that. So there's a stigma here that we're working to break down. And then what are we building? Well, we're building a mental health brand, a men's mental health brand that is focused on the media side, in building the brand, in educating, in destigmatizing, speaking. We're building on our presence in social media right now. We are about to launch our first retreat, and we're building out a membership model. We are also working. We find ourselves within the middle of the ecosystem as it pertains to companies who are innovating and building their businesses to address these problems, and then people looking to invest in the solution. So I have spoken a lot. I'm gonna stop right there and see if there's any questions, or Sean may want to jump in.
Yeah, I'm gonna chime in for a second. So, when this happened, it was really scary for me, for my family, for my kids. And then it was also scary when we basically announced the reel on LinkedIn. I have a lot of LinkedIn folks. So I hit the button on LinkedIn and basically said, I'm not doing good. Right? And we're starting this new initiative. So it was really great to see so many people came back and were super supportive. We didn't really talk about vulnerability, but it's just we're seeing that vulnerability is now seen hopefully as strength, right? When people open up and basically that people are not looking down on them or whatever. So after just on that thread, so we sent out the LinkedIn message, and then an interesting thing came back. A lot of groups were coming back to us and asking us to speak. So one specific group was Tiger 21, some folks might know Tiger 21. It's a high net worth group. And so we did a couple of talks with them in Chicago, and we were kind of amazed how that went. Brent, do you want to touch on that? Because you tell the story well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we our first speech was in Chicago with one of the cohorts in Chicago, and we speak and tell the same story that we're telling here. And so we get to Chicago, we're walking into the Tiger 21 group, and my belief I'm thinking to myself, we are going to get laughed out of the room because of the level of vulnerability that we're walking in with. And of course, that's my own fear and my own ego. So we walk in, we go in, we tell the story. There's about 18 guys. And our speech was supposed to last for 45 minutes. We ended up going for an hour and a half. From the lead, the chair of the group came to us afterwards, and he said, "Brent, this is the most interactive I've ever seen the group, number one. And number two, there were a couple billionaires in the room, and one of them was vulnerable for the first time he had ever been." So we walked out and we looked at each other. This is truly real, and this is now work that we're both going to commit to. And then we went back to Chicago and did it again, and had the exact same response. And then August 2nd, we're actually speaking to the entire Atlanta cohort of Tiger 21. So there's a need. We're really uncovering it right now.
I'm gonna tell one more story, Robert. Then I'll shut up and open up for questions.
All right.
So it's just an interesting
the screen share for a second.
Oh, yes.
So we were just talking about Chicago. So this is just an interesting story. So Chicago has two airports, O'Hare and Midway. So I flew into Midway, assuming I'm going to fly out of Midway, but this is just part of the story. So we were in Tiger 21, and we were talking to our friends there. And, this affects everyone. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic kind of status. He was talking about one of the members had a really big exit from their company, and they were miserable. Right? So just like it's not interrelated to where you are financially. And then me and Brent were going to go back to I was going back to Midway. So I got into an Uber. I was in the Uber, and I was having a conversation, like very candid conversation with one of my old friends, and I had my phone on speaker, right? And then after I gave my talk, basically my Uber driver was like, "I'm sorry, I was listening in." I was like, "Of course you're listening in. I had it on speaker, dude. It's okay." So he said, "There's a reason why you were in my Uber." He was a young guy around 29, and he had some suicidal ideations and other things. So we just got to talk, and hopefully I gave him some good words to make him feel better about himself. And just, this is not unusual. This happens to a lot of people, right? And just, we're looking to play it forward. But here's the funny thing. So then I got into Midway. I went to security. I was about to go on the plane, go through security. I couldn't get through security. And then they're like, "Listen, you're at the wrong airport." So I was really to go to O'Hare. So you never know what's going to happen or why you're in a certain place. So it's just an interesting circumstance.
I had some questions. Neither of you are mental health practitioners, both, financial or business development or management people. So you're not using any pharmacological treatment because you're not allowed to do that. You're not using any specific therapy. You're just chatting with some guys. How do you think that you can actually help someone without those kind of underpinning qualifications that most mental health practitioners need to have?
I'll take that first. So no, don't have any of those qualifications. Can't give any medicines. But I know from myself, it was about community, right? And people supporting you. For example, we now have a small group of people that we're on a text with, about 10 guys, and we just help to support each other, right? And like the other day, one of the guys I was speaking to, he wasn't doing good, And I said, someone please talk to him. So there's a power in the community. There's a power in talking. There's a power of just being around people. It's also the big problem, isolation. And I know how it feels. You feel like you're totally isolated. No one cares about you. No one's so no, we don't have that, Robert. But we're going to bring that in for the business side, for sure, right? We're going to bring in those experts. But it's the power of community. It's also the power of kind of what we're calling being real. Because when we had another call with our mastermind group, and it was supposed to go for 40. There was like 40 guys on there. Supposed to go for 45 minutes. It went for an hour because people want to feel like they're part of something. So it's very important what you're saying is on having the trained therapists, the medicines, etc. But there's another big part of it that's all about community and feeling about being part of something. Brent, I don't know if you wanted to chime in too.
Yeah. Listen, I've, in just simply studying this stuff, yes, pharmacology can very much play a role, depending on where people are on the spectrum. But what we all have learned is that there are many other modalities that can also play a role. And those modalities can be things such as simple things. They can be meditation, they can be journaling, they can be breath work, they can be levels of awareness of your own programming and childhood, things like that. And so, yes, obviously you need trained people who are licensed to do this stuff. And the goal is to bring those trained people into this membership model that we're building. But there are also very real things that people can do, just walk away from today. Specifically meditation, breath work, journaling, things like that.
I'm going to add on. Sorry, Robert, I'm adding on to that. Sorry. So like me and Brent, right? So why was Brent so, helped me out so much? I say he was my guardian angel because he's been there, and I've been to therapists and they're terrific, right? But they're not there like Brent was there or a friend's going to be there. It's a different, you're paying them to do their thing and that's cool, right? But that's their job, right? This relationship. And when you're in the pain, there's like a certain pain that's hard to describe and all you see is darkness, right? It's great to have someone else there that's been there because it's really hard for people to be like, I understand you. I'm like, it's hard for you. It's almost like Alcoholics Anonymous when you have a sponsor, someone who's been there.
And the correct me if I'm wrong, Sean went through a management screw out from his previous company. Brent didn't. So one had a fork in the road, and Brent, or you're not sharing everything about your past, you kind of evolved into this without a breakdown or a breakthrough.
So my fork, I actually, had been with Twitter when Twitter was a, 150 person company. I left when there was 4,000. I resigned to go to another company. And when I resigned, I just went, I had my moment. It was me leaving this company that I had, sort of felt that I had authored in a bit. And that was just my moment. And that was the thing that led me into this dark night, this for myself. So it was actually pretty deep, and it was scary, and it was dark thoughts, and it was all the things that Sean was going through. It's just a little further back in my rearview mirror now, that has given me much more time to see it and process it. And my journey ended up being wanting to learn about why was I going through this? Why was I feeling this way? Why was I depressed after, having created all of this success in my life? And so, always having been a fairly introspective dude, it just ended up being the way that things turned out for me.
Comparing the financial sector or the non-financial sector or the non-profit sector or the not-for-loss sector or the for-profit, is there a unhappiness and depression? Is there, I mean, because in the financial sector, many don't leave, even though they hate what they're doing. They're just comfortable. And they're just not brave enough to say, I had enough of this. Is there more or less depression in the financial sector, or the for-profit versus non-profit versus the non-financial space?
I don't know the answer to that one, Robert.
You don't have to give me statistics.
Well, I just know myself, right? And I know that I've been talking to a lot of people, having conversations, people that were in my universe, and most of them are LPs, GPs, investors, and then people outside of that. But it seems to affect everyone, because when I tell this story, a lot of people, not to a person, they're like, thank you for telling me that. My brother committed suicide. My dad was depressed, right? They were at a treatment center, or they'll say something like, Sean, I never told anyone this, but X, Y, and Z. So I'll let Brent go on that. I'll tell you which sectors are affected more. I just say that this is a human problem. Looking back at the person in the Uber, right? He was a driver, and the other guy got an exit. It's not going to discriminate. But Brent, do you want to go on that?
Yeah. What I was going to say was, I mean, yes, it is clearly identified that, being of service is a fulfilling model. Obviously creating resources and wealth for yourself is obviously a thing. Now, that being said, the one thing, and I'm going to go back to a study that was done by Harvard. This was an 80-year study. They studied 850 people over 80 years. And the study came down to one question, that either someone lived a happy, fulfilling life or an unhappy, unfulfilling life. And the one question was this: if you woke up at 3:00 in the morning with tragedy in your life, how many people could you call? And dependent on the answer to that number was the answer to the fulfillment and happiness in their lives. So what does that actually say? That says that what is actually fulfillment and happiness is community. And as the world has moved from community, big family, to separation, in my opinion, my gut only has led to a lot of isolation, a lot of loneliness, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. And so that doesn't answer your question on the financial sector, but I think it may, at a broader sense, of what is actually bringing people happiness and fulfillment, and what people have forgotten over the years of what brings them happiness and fulfillment.
Okay. And do you think that you came from the media tech? I'm sorry to pile in on you. Do you think that Facebook, Twitter, all these social media should have a toxic warning label like cigarettes?
So what I can tell you is there was a Netflix special called The Social Dilemma, and they interviewed all of the product managers who built all of the social platforms. One of the product managers, I knew a bunch of the guys, and one of them I knew very well. And he was the lead engineer at Twitter. And they studied in depth what happened in the human mind with brain maps, with heat wave maps, to see what happened in the human brain when you were using specifically. And what they found was that the more likes and replies and comments that you got on a message, what happened in the mind was you got what was called a dopamine hit. And so what they built a technology that essentially gave you dopamine hits so that you would come back more. Now, what we have learned is that now the overusage of social has in some cases depleted these brains of dopamine, which has led to depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. So the answer to your question is absolutely yes, because social media has just been an experiment. There has never been a long-term study done to say, hey, 6 hours of usage on social media can actually lead you into deep depression. And the answer is that it can. So my long answer to your question is absolutely yes.
When you were working at Big Path over those 10, 15 years, 16 years, so you were quite driven. You were the go-to guy who would get things done and travel around the world. But at the time, it seemed that you were enjoying yourself, that you had, it gave you energy, it didn't cost you energy. And then all of a sudden, it did cost you energy, a lot of energy. What specifically happened?
So for sure, I love my job. I love the clients. I love the LPs. I love the traveling. I don't know if I more dealing with other things. I'm not going to touch on that. Was add stress, and I think we also grew from a point where at the beginning it might have been more fun than when it was, even though we're doing good. It just things changed.
And because you're dealing, your people that you're meeting are people from your network or networks of networks who are mainly from the business community, I would imagine, not so much from the nonprofit space. One of my dear friends, David Sumek, who's a psychotherapist and senior guy at NHS, he said something really beautiful in our last interview. He said, society is unhappy. And I mean, very simple, and he could quantify it and all of that. Do you think that the people that come to your events to hear your story, how many of them are really willing to do the work or make the decision and say, enough?
I'm not sure what you mean by enough, Robert.
I need to have it. This is not giving me purpose. This is not fulfilling. I either want to change the way I operate here, or I need to find something that is giving me purpose. Few actually do that. People, it's like wealthy people who complain about their private bankers. Very few of them ever leave, but they're complaining about their private bankers.
Right. So, couple of things on that. Brent, why don't you go first on that?
Yeah. I think, look, I think everybody gets to a point. I think everybody has a limit, and when that limit is hit, either in most cases the body will tell you when. The body will tell you when in many different ways, and it's a matter of if we listen. I like to say we get tapped on the shoulder, and in most cases we don't listen, and then whatever the bigger energy you think of in your life, smacks us across the head with a sledgehammer, and so that makes us listen, and usually that is some sort of a physical ailment or loss or whatever it may be.
And what is the big purpose of the reel? What are you trying to achieve? Is it just about creating community of like-minded, shared values?
Sure. So I'll touch on that for a second and also let Brent. So, really there's a lot of men, women, and families that are suffering. Like my family was suffering. My kids were suffering. I was suffering, right? And we want to help those folks. We've been there, right? So how do we do that? I think important, like you were saying before, we'll have the connections with the different people. Also, therapy is very important, and those other things, medication is very important, right? Again, we're not doctors, but we're probably going to refer people to experts in the space that are experts in the world. We're going to bring people together on the community side virtually, and then through retreats, because like Brent said, really the quality of your life comes down to the quality of your relationships. So we're helping people to build better relationships. We're also helping them when the guys are on the call for the real, it's almost like you got this, when you see someone and you give them the nod, you know what I'm saying? Right? You're like, you're okay. I'm okay. Talk about real stuff together. I'm on, we're not going to sugar. I mean, it's not like, like silly fairy stuff, but you can tell me, what's really going on, dude, right? What's really going on with you? And I'm not going to judge you, and I'm here to help you, because every person has been through shit. And if they say they haven't, they are lying to you, because that's just life.
And you said you have, it's open to men and women, but most of the people that were coming to your event were men. Was that because you weren't doing outreach to women, or just men sharing their grief with other men?
I think we just started this thing. It's literally, I got out of treatment 3 months ago, right? So that's our low hanging fruit and that's where our network is. And me and Brent are dudes, right? So women are welcome, but at this point, it's just like, where are you going to go? And I think men, like Brent was saying before, it's just a different situation. He was saying that women go face to face, we go shoulder to shoulder. A lot of guys are out there like the lone wolves, and you want to keep it in. So women definitely everybody needs help, right? But women have a different social network. I'll even talk about kids, right? So my kids, are 14 and 15, and I was away for 60 days. I tried to hide it from them, but when you're shaking, non really responsive, you can't hide it from them. You can't hide it from anybody. So when I went away and then I came back, I was like, listen, I'm sorry I went away and all that. And they were like, listen, Daddy, we're just happy you're doing better. We just want our daddy back. So this affects everyone, even though we're maybe for right now, we're just focused on the men. So that's where we're at.
And do you find a difference culturally, like Caucasian, Asian, African American, Hispanic? Do you find that most of the people coming to your event are pale male stale, or because of cultural reasons, or do you find that it doesn't play a role at all?
I think it plays a role with everybody. Our events right now are places that we know, right? So you could say you're going to the super nice places, because I did an event in Nantucket for 9 years. People in Nantucket. We're going to do it in Nantucket. We're going to do it in Martha's Vineyard. We're doing it in Greenwich, Connecticut. We're doing it in Southampton. You could say, oh, those are super high net worth places. Yeah, because guess what? That's our network at this time. But it affects everyone. For example, the guy who was my Uber driver, right? This 29-year-old African American kid. So it's not. So where we have to start somewhere, and we're going to start with the network that we know, in my mind.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take a couple of questions. Or here's a comment from Daniela sent. Connections and having a peer group who is understanding your feelings is usually important. And Jacob wanted to know, or posing, therapy was helpful and part of my healing journey. He came from hardcore advertising business. But it was the one or two individual with whom I could talk openly, or who could text to check up on me, that felt like it made the biggest difference. I had the benefit of a support network, but what of those who don't have that in place?
Yeah, I'll hop in. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we're building. Is to really sort of create that. But today, I guess those that don't where that is not in place, there is a tremendous amount of content and information and people, places popping up to help the issue. And so there's a lot, but we're happy to help if somebody needs it right now, to even just sort of talk through things.
Yeah. But I would say, Robert, it's tough, because look at, I'm a good example. I have my whole family. Financially, I'm doing okay, have all these resources, and I don't know where to go and what to do. If my wife wasn't around and she handled basically everything, I couldn't speak. she's handling contracts. She's whispering in my ear. But yeah, it's really rough if you don't have the support system to help you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We're trying to build something to do that, but it takes a village.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, when he was talking about therapy, 100% therapy is great. And we want to have therapists, and then it's just kind of, it's a little bit like climate change, all of the above, right? You kind of have to have do whatever you can. So that's how we look at it.
There was a movie, I think it was in the 60s or 70s, called Network. I don't know if you ever saw it. And in that, it was about TV news. And in that, there was a guy, the commentator or the presenter, his name is Howard Beale. And he kind of had a breakdown or breakthrough. And he went on national news, and he said, he was telling about the horrors of the world. And he was asking everyone, stick your head out and shout as loud as you can. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. A very good film. Even if you just watch on YouTube that scene, are the people that you engage with, are they mad as hell or just unhappy?
Great question. Yeah. It's funny. It's like, everybody's wired a little differently. And, there are, people who are wired with, nothing will break me. Nothing will knock me down. I have a deep inner sense of survivorship, confidence. And, that can be ego or whatever you may want to call it. And then there are people who have always been in touch with feelings and can feel things deeper. It seems that the ones that can feel things deeper get affected a bit more by the challenges of life. And so I think it's a spectrum. And I think, regardless of the spectrum, just in communication with like-minded souls, that you can talk about where you are, where you're trying to go. It's the community that can help you get there.
Mm-hmm. Aaron Tate had a question. Great discourse, everyone. You are doing a real social good for the global healthcare community. I'd be interested if you both have any dialogues coming up to address toxic masculinity so that men can be more in touch with their feelings, emotions, values, and behaviors. Aaron is in Florida.
It's another good one. I'm gonna jump on that one again, Sean.
That's yours, yeah.
Yeah. So let's think. There's a lot there. Let me just start with. With on one hand, what we're seeing in society, and we've seen for a long time now, has been a couple things towards men. And, on one hand, men are getting all of these mixed messages, like tamper down the toxic masculinity, be more vulnerable, and the guy is dancing a little bit because in some cases he doesn't know exactly how to be vulnerable, how to even get in touch with his emotions, because his entire life he was never taught that. And so there, as much as this chatter around, tamp down the toxic masculinity, I have compassion because there's so many men that all they know is primal masculinity, because at the core, in a lot of ways also for men, we are primally built to be the hunter, to go out to the forest, to kill the boar, to bring it home and family and put a roof over their heads and educate the family. That is a primal biological response in the male. Now, society at the same time is saying, hey, don't tamper down the toxic masculinity. And the guy's saying there's a primal biology in him that's saying, well, that's all I know. That is what I am supposed to do. That is literally hardwired in the brain from millions of years of being a male. Now, at the same time, as society has modernized and technology has modernized, and men have gotten lonelier, and there's no more tribe to be in, to be the hard masculine guy. The vulnerability and the emoting piece is becoming more and more important. The problem is such a large part of the population has just never been taught it. And so when you're never taught it and it is not part of your wiring, it's very hard to just say, hey, I'm going to just be an empathetic and compassionate male when it was never taught to you. So the man is dancing a bit right now, and I think it's taking a lot of society to destigmatize it, to show what it means to be a dude's dude. I'm a guy's guy. I played football, I played baseball. I'm a pretty hardcore dude. But at the same time, I will tell you if something hurt my feelings, or if I'm embarrassed, or if I'm feeling shame. And so it's being able to showcase more and more of these examples that then will give those toxic masculine men the license to say, you know what, I'm actually feeling the same thing, and now I can talk about it. I know that was a long answer, but
it's fine.
There's a lot in there. Yeah.
One of the what happens a lot at events, whether they're day, half day, multiple days, is that whether it's Catapult, the Norwegian Burning Man, or Civilized, is lots of selfies, great conversations, powerful conversations, but then nothing ever happens. People never call you back or never call. How do you make sure that there is continuity and follow-up in what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, Sean, I'm going to let you come talking too much. I was just going to say that's everything that has to do with the membership, in terms of, you're part of the community, and part of the community means when you become part of the community, it is now our job to serve you as the community. And in serving you as the community is bringing together people who are like-minded, who are able to communicate and really create relationships for long periods of time. That's just my kind of off the cuff answer. Sean, you may have that.
No, I think it's really serving them. It's building those bonds so that's kind of like the follow up is it's want to build those bonds for a long time. Not I saw you and then you're gone, because I think especially guys, there's this loneliness, this isolation, right? So if you can bring guys like us together, like yourself, Robert, and we could have these kind of open conversations, it just builds stronger relationships versus, hey, let's go to the game. That's nice. We can go to the game. That's cool. But just to be and have those relationships with people all over the world, so you're not like, I'm the only guy feeling like this. Yeah, I'm the only one feeling like this. No, we're all feeling like this, and we can talk about different things and feel comfortable, and that's just going to bring us close together, right? And then having conversations weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever. It's just trying to keep the community together, because some of those events, they happen once a year, and then you're off and you're running, and then you see them the next year. But we have to have something where we have follow up. And I also think it's being accountable, being basically having members accountable, right? So, for example, Brent, I was accountable for Brent. There was a couple of days I wasn't feeling good. He's like, dude, do you have a morning routine? I was like, no. He's like, here's your morning routine, right? Mm-hmm. Get up, meditate, journaling, go for exercise. And I'm like, okay, I'm accountable to this now. I'm going to report back. That's what it is. And then checking on each other. Dude, how are you doing? When someone says, I'm doing okay, that means they're doing shitty, right? So they need a phone call. They need to say, hey, man, what's up? I'm with you. Something simple as that.
I think the other thing I just want to throw in, I know we're almost at time on this piece, is there is real data around and science around what happens in the brain around vulnerability. Vulnerability actually lights up the right side of the brain, which is responsible for creativity, connection, and trust. So when those levels of vulnerability happen with whomever it is, automatically a level of connection and trust occurs, and so it's sort of it's authentic. It's just real, which then opens the door for relationship, longer, more meaningful relationship. The happiness in our lives is 100%, allocated to how rich our relationships are with each other.
The we used to say, or I always say that everybody wants to come to the party, but nobody wants to bring the chairs, and nobody wants to actually do anything. And I also, we've been helping people for 25, 30 years, and it was always, I felt I was pulling the cart up the hill while people were sitting in the cart eating a sandwich. And how do you make sure that you're not carrying the cart up the hill, that people are getting off the cart and also pushing?
So go ahead, Brent.
So I was going to say, it takes real courage to, to share these levels of vulnerability. But it takes sort of someone to light the fire, like, Sean's courage to share his story as vulnerably. What we've seen has just opened up people on the other side to begin to share theirs. And we've seen it in every call we've been on. Because everyone has something happening in their lives.
Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
No, I think we're kind of we only 3 months, Robert, but we're kind of pushing this up the hill. Me and Brent are pushing it up the hill, and it feels like it's going to roll down the other side. Just the amount of people that also be like, guys, I want to work with you. You don't have to pay me. I just want to be involved in this. So I think we've hit on a chord where people are just like, I want to be involved in this. I want to help this grow, right? I want to be on this journey with you guys. So it can't be just me and Brent, right? It's kind of lighting the fire and get this thing cooking, basically.
We're coming toward the end. I promise to try to keep it to an hour, although people seem to be still listening and not asking questions. How can we help you?
Brent, you want to touch on that one? Or you want me to?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
You don't win anything if you give the right answer.
I think is just keep on spreading the word, what we're doing, right? The more people hear about it, the more they're interested. It's kind of a multiplier effect. Yeah. We're on this journey. Follow us on this journey. Sure, we would love you to join us, being members. We're still working that out on the exact model. So we kind of have a brain trust around that. But right now, it's just keep on spread the word that these guys, if you think we're doing something interesting, tell other people. And we're happy to speak to them about that. And just, there's little things like just sometimes people are hitting me, just some guy's not doing good. And he just hits me. I'm like, all right, let's have a conversation, right? So we're kind of, there's the micro and the macro, right? So we're having those conversations. Hey, did that get me any money? No, that's cool. I'm not worried about that, but we're helping people. And then of course, sure, we got to make a living. We got to make a business out of this, right? So you got that side too. So it's telling other people about what we're doing and really getting them excited about it. And then going, okay, then we have to deliver on the next chapter. What's going to happen? What do you get going forward? But the worst case is you're getting more community, right? If we make if we make money, we don't be successful because we're helping folks, right? And we're helping people build community. That's my soapbox. I'll give it to Brent.
No, that was you nailed it. I think that's it. Yeah, it's just spread the word.
So dying rich as quickly as possible is not the motivation.
There's nothing wrong with making money. It's all good, right? Good. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a quick group selfie to prove to me you were actually working today. In case she has any doubts, just wave to the camera and the system will collate all of the photos and then I'll send this to everyone. I want to thank Sean and Brent for being very open and transparent and sharing their journey. I also want to thank the entire production crew, Sam, our producer, Crypto Genius and Ramen Critic, Ricky, my absolute better half with no filter, Xi Jinping, our head of transparency and integrity, Vladimir Putin, our head of conflict resolution, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Nobel Prize winner for stupidity, Elon Musk, our humility coach, and Trump, our lead fact checker. So I want to thank all of those who made this possible. We're going to do a short virtual networking after this. An hour or two after the system finishes, that we send out the replay for those who want to watch it again, or those who weren't able to join. If you want me to add anything specifically to that email link, Brent and Sean, just send me a text and I'll add that. So just stay in the room and the system will take care of you. Thank you again. Great job.
Thanks,
and
Art.
Congratulations on this really important work. Here we go.
Thanks, Robert.